What's up, guys? I'm Karastar, and this clip is from Difficult Content, an interview podcast about Final Fantasy XIV. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below and click the link at the end for the full interview. I want to talk to you briefly about your controller setup and UI because I find these little expressions of personality interesting. I too play on controller, and when mapping out my skills for a new job, I always try to put my GCDs on the face buttons and my OGCDs on the D-pad, regardless of the left or right modifiers. You, however, have your Toxicon on your D-pad. How on earth do you move effectively with the left stick while also using those skills with your left thumb? Is it some form of claw grip?
When I was a teenager, I used to play a lot of console shooters. I know I'm one of those kinds of people. And in order to be good at those games, a lot of the time you had to use claw grip. So I'm really comfortable using crab hands. And whenever I need to do movement and press one of those skills at the same time, I essentially channel my inner 14-year-old so that I can claw again and just swap my hands to do that, essentially.
And I'm going to keep going on this, but you seem to prioritize your right modifier, putting your most used skills on the right side of both set 1 and set 2. Most of your button presses during a fight are going to be using the right modifier then. So I, however, try to prioritize set 1, so most of my buttons are on the first set, and switching to set 2 is the uncommon move for me, as opposed to how using the left modifier would be more uncommon for you. Was this a conscious decision, or am I just an absolute nerd for noticing?
I was actually really surprised that you noticed. When I started learning the game, I had a few different jobs leveled, and I wanted to instill a set of rules that were common across all jobs so I could remember where the buttons were more recently. So for my healers, I have a healing set and I have a DPS set, which is really redundant now because healers have like 2 DPS skills. But I still follow that rule where on set 1, on the right side, is the basic healing moves, and for non-healers on set 1, on the right side is the basic combo buttons always, and then on the left side it is the healing moves that I couldn't fit on the right side but I use a lot, usually GCDs or off globals with a short cooldown. And for tanks, that's where most of my mitigation cooldowns are for personal mitigation. Everything that is like 60 seconds or below I attempt to put on the left side on set 1, and then you go over to set 2, and on the right side I always attempt to put raid mitigation and AoE skills and things like that. And for healers, I put my DPS skills there, unless there's like a random space that I just fill at some point because a new skill gets released on a new expansion. And then on the left side on set 2 is all of the mitigations or cooldowns or things like that that don't pop up more often. So for example, the 2-minute buffs on a DPS will usually go on set 2 on the left, whereas the AoE combo will go on set 2 on the right. I suppose the only exception to that is Dragon Sight on Dragoon, because I use macros to be able to target people more easily. So I have like 4 buttons for it for the 4 potential targets, which is very fun. Because I'm a psychopath, even though I still have 3 buttons on set 2, I always put Limit Break and Arm's Length on set 3. For some reason, I don't really know why. I have to swap between 3 sets while playing almost every fight for literally no reason.
Getting that third set is complicated. I try to avoid it. Some jobs you can, some jobs you can't. When I was first learning jobs, I specifically targeted jobs like Machinist or White Mage that you could fit everything you needed on those 2 sets just out of sheer laziness.
I used to almost exclusively play jobs that I could fit onto 2 sets. And as I started leveling more jobs, I realized, especially back in Heaven's Ward, where some jobs have 30 plus buttons, it was just not really realistically possible. So I kind of expanded my brain and learned to use the third set of it.
Watching Violent Destruction play Astro on controller sometimes just blows my mind with how he cycles through all of that. Sage-specific question for you. You have your Eucrasia modifier on both set 1 and set 2. Why'd you double it up?
Eucrasia's on both set 1 and set 2 because the very anal rule is that I use it both while DPSing and while healing. So it goes on the DPS hotbar and the healing hotbar.
That's fantastic. Another thing I noticed is that your party list is up in the upper left-hand corner in almost a near default position. I keep mine centered vertically and then just left enough. And I've seen a lot of healers kind of keep it where I have it or invert it and keep it centered vertically, but on the right-hand side. Do you find it difficult at all to see your party list with it in the corner?
I think that my party list placement is pretty suboptimal. The problem is I got so used to it that I think it would be harder to swap than just to keep it as it is. Sometimes it's a little bit jank, but because I've been playing the game for such a long time, I feel like I would need to regain the muscle memory on where they were if I were to move them into a more optimal position. So I just kind of keep them where they are, and I think that's the case for a lot of things on my UI in general.
Hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below and click this link right here for the full interview.